Hello and welcome to the Unofficial Maritime Wrestling Podcast interview series. And this episode is our honor to have a true legend in professional wrestling. Some of you may know him as the son of Cuban Assassin. Some of you may know him as Rotten Ronnie, the Cuban Commando, or Cuban Assassin number 2, Richie Acevedo. Welcome to the episode.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
So let's start off with the first question. What's your earliest memory of professional wrestling?
Well, I got really good memory. I mean, I remember as far back as when I was 1 year old. And
Really?
Oh yeah. I don't know why, but I got a very good memory. But my my memories of being a kid, actually, with my dad being a wrestler. You know, when my dad met my mom, he met her in Oak Hill, West Virginia, wrestling for a television program called Saturday Night Wrestling, which was on WYTV4. Now, for those in the Maritimes, Saturday Night Wrestling was really the same thing as Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling is to you guys up there, what it is to here. It was just a regional territory wrestling promotion, and it aired, like I said, WYTV4 in Oak Hill, and right down the road is Hilltop, West Virginia, and a little diner called Skyline Drive-In is where my mother was working her first job. And that's where she would end up meeting my dad at the Skyline after a wrestling show. And he would tell my mom that she was going to become the mother of his 2 kids. And that's exactly what happened. You know, and 9 months later, I was the result. So my dad was wrestling and working at Saturday Night Wrestling, and I was born on September 13th, 1970. In 1973, Dad would leave Saturday Night Wrestling, go to Montreal, and he would go be booked for the Vachons, which was, you guys called it International, but it's actually Grand Prix Wrestling.
Yeah,
and that's where
Grand Prix.
And Emile Dupree was there wrestling for the Vachons as well, and he stole their name to make Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling when he did the summer territory. Well, he booked my dad, so in the summer of 73, 74, and 75, me and my sister Cindy were there. My sister was born in 1971, but we were there up in Shediac, New Brunswick, staying at one of the Emile's cottages. Now, I've been there, and it does not look the same. It was a big open field with tall weed grass, and it's right by the coming in from the ocean there, and has some couple cabins there. Now the cabins are gone, and it used to have a dirt rocky road. You had to go through a long dirt road to get to the cabins there, and that's where all the wrestlers primarily stayed. That was those cabins. And Dad would be teamed up with Frank Sieberstein, who became the other Cuban Assassin.
Oh yeah.
And Don Leo Jonathan was responsible for putting them 2 together. And because they looked a lot alike, they looked similar, so they became the Cuban Assassins. And but what a lot of people don't know is that my uncle, my dad's real brother, my Uncle Papa, was also a wrestler. He wrestled Cyclone Acevedo in Puerto Rico, and he was supposed to be my dad's tag team partner as the original Cuban Assassins, but my uncle's wife, my Aunt Lucy, told him that if he left Puerto Rico, she would divorce him. So he stayed in Puerto Rico and only wrestled there. Wow. And then another guy came in and called the Black Panther, became the Cuban Assassins with my dad first. They were the first ones. And then after he left, then later on, Dad would team up with Frank Sieberstein. They became the actual known Cuban Assassins that we all know today. And of course, later on, you would get Jack Kruger after Frank Sieberstein would be Cuban Assassin with Dad. Then you have Champagne Jerry Morrow become Comrade Jerry Morrow, and they become the Cuban Commandos. And then there was me, actual father and son tag team Cuban Assassins. And then later on be me, my son, and my nephew as the Cuban Dynasty. But my early memories of wrestling is from WYTV4 Saturday Night Wrestling. My dad would have me in a locker room, which really wasn't a locker room. It was like a hallway. Very, very small, people getting dressed on a very small bench. And the hallway had like 2 entrances to go to the studio because they had studio-style wrestling. But then they would graduate when they would graduate from the studio over, because it was live. Live wrestling happened first, and before videotape. So live wrestling happened at the Fett Memorial Building at the auditorium in Fayetteville, West Virginia, which is only 4 miles down the road from where I'm living at now. And then they would graduate to the studio style wrestling, where they was able to videotape it in this TV Lane studio, WYTV4, and that will be on video. But then what happened is in 1977, and just so you know, Saturday Night Wrestling lasted from 1954 all the way until 1977.
Okay.
And in 1977, the news studio burnt down, and then they had to run the news studio while they was building the new TV studios and all that, TV station. They had to broadcast the news from the auditorium in Fayetteville, so wrestling ended. And then a lot of wrestlers went somewhere else, and then some retired and stayed in the area. And when they built the new TV studio, they didn't have room for the wrestling. Wrestling was already gone. So they just made the newsroom, and that was it. And the other side was a bowling alley that they used to have for the professional bowlers there. And then later on, the Paw folks would come in with ICW, International Championship Wrestling, their outlaw promotion. And the Paw folks, it's weird, they had just came from tour from Emile Dupree's Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling, and Randy Savage was the international champion, so the inaugural first champion of ICW was Randy Savage as the international heavyweight champion. And they would have TV here for a little while. Then after they finally merged, when they finally got booked for Jerry Lawler and Jerry Jarrett in Memphis, which was their goal, and they sold ICW, and they went there, and that's where Savage was picked up by Vince McMahon from there. But then after that was Jim Cornette's Smoky Mountain Wrestling. So there was only 3 original promotions here, which is the original territory, which was Saturday Night Wrestling. And then you had the Pafos ICW, and then you had Smoky Mountain Wrestling, Jim Cornette Smoky Mountain Wrestling here. But we left in 73, and I have memories being up in Montreal, Canada. And I mean, I could tell people when I was a kid, because there was a wrestler there. The world knows him as Gypsy Joe, but he was known as Gene Madrid in Saturday Night Wrestling. And Dad and Gypsy Joe and another wrestler named Chief Black Eagle here, Louis Torres, they were all from Puerto Rico. They were all raised in Puerto Rico. So was Salvio Vega. They're all from that same group of area. Jovica, Carlos Colon, all of them. So Dad, when he went up there to Montreal, I mean, I can tell you, I remember, see, I call him Gene, but he's Gypsy Joe to the world, the legendary hardcore legend.
Yep.
And I remember some guy beating his wife downstairs. And I remember my mom having me and my sister and Jeanette, Gypsy Joe's wife, and his daughter Janae were there, and she was holding her, and they knocked and pounded on the door because the guy was making a lot of noise. And I remember the guy cussing out my dad, which was a big mistake when he got in my dad's face, because what people don't know is my dad was raised in the streets of Puerto Rico, and you probably heard some of his legendary knife fights, which they fought with knives back then, not guns, yep. Knives. And my dad knows how to conceal and hide a knife. And then all of a sudden, the guy says something, and my dad just nailed him. Pow! Knocked him straight back, and then he went in, and Joe went in right behind him, and all you could hear was fists, pow, 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 smacking, and my mom screaming, hollering my dad's name, Angel, and Jeanette hollering out for Joe. And then they come out, and the girl was crying, and, she thought I thought my dad killed the guy. He beat the crap out of the guy for beating his wife. And my mom's like, I can't believe you took up for that woman down there. And my dad's like, oh, I didn't do that for her. She's stupid for being an abusive guy anyway. He said, I did it because he's making too much noise and I couldn't get no sleep. So, here I thought my dad's doing the honorable thing, and my dad was like, he was making too much noise. He said, my dad's like, he's a different kind of person from a different time period. And when women are being in an abusive relationship, now, of course, back then, a woman could leave. You know, it wasn't like, I guess, today where the guy was stalker or something. I mean, I'm sure there were cases like that back then too, but you know, my dad's like, you know, she could have left any time she wanted to. You know, she could have left out of the room once they got open the door, and then when he got in Dad's face, he just nailed him. And my dad was, you know, had already had a couple beers in him before that, and he wanted to get some sleep. You know, because being on tour on the road, you're tired, and performing every night, you're burning. You know, a 10-minute match, you're burning the excess amount of football players do in 2 football games in 10 minutes. And you're in 10 minutes, you're burning, you know, almost. I mean, the only people can compare to wrestlers would have to be basketball players because they were doing both defense and offense back them, and hockey players. Same thing. Soccer players, you're doing both offense, defense, and you're exerting the same amount of energy, but they're doing longer in periods. As in wrestling, you have 10, 20, 30 minutes, depending if they want you, how long they need you to go. So, you know, my dad was tired, and he would just, that guy and the girls making too much noise. And he went down there, and then Joe, you know, I guess heard Dad open the door, and he decides to go down there too. And listen, Joe was a tough guy.
Oh yeah,
one of the toughest old men I ever been in the ring with. And but my dad was a pro boxer before he was a pro wrestler, and he grew up a street fighter in Puerto Rico. And Puerto Rico is like a third world country today. Imagine what it was like in the 1940s and 1950s, you know. So, and my dad had to carry a knife. Now you go to Puerto Rico, there's bars in the windows, bars in the doors, because the crime rate's so outrageous, you know, there. And so people had to protect their property and their homes. And my dad lived in the mountains of Guanobo, Puerto Rico, so you can imagine how it was. But yeah, my memories is from WYTV4 Saturday Night Wrestling here in Oak Hill, West Virginia, to Montreal with the Vachons, and over in New Brunswick in the Maritimes for Emile Dupree's Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling. I don't think he was calling it Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling right in the beginning. I don't think he actually was calling that until later at the end of the 70s. I think he was starting to call it Atlantic Grand Prix. He was working with another promoter, you know, when my dad was up there. And
was the promoter Len Hughes?
It probably was. Was. I remember Maurice Mad Dog Vachon being there and taking his false front teeth out and going to trying to scare me and my sister, and we'd be screaming and going to our mom, and my mom would be like, you know, Angel, stop him. And then Andre the Giant was there, but he was wrestling as Jean Ferry at that time. And this is early on in Andre's career. I mean, he wouldn't, within a matter of a couple years from the, it's weird. I mean, here I'm seeing Andre the Giant. I remember him as a kid, and he looks at Butcher Vachon and he says, "Hey, no scare kids." And Butcher Maurice Vachon is like, okay, I'm sorry. No one crossed Andre. You know, Andre was the boss wherever he was at. You know.
Yeah.
And then Andre had me. My sister comes and he sits in his lap, and he's, you know, he was General John. We loved him. We were scared to death of Mad Dog Vachon. And I know Mad Dog didn't mean to really scare us, you know, but my memories are really there. And then in 1975, my mom and my dad decided that my mom would bring my sister Cindy and I back to Oak Hill, West Virginia, and enroll us in school there, because it's where my mom was born, where she lived and everything. But she passed away a couple years ago, and but that's where we would raise and spend our lives. And then Dad would come in one week out of a year, except for 1980. He was in for 2 weeks, and he took Cindy and I down to Puerto Rico for a week to visit our family, and then brought us back. And then that would be the last time I see my dad until I graduated from high school in 1989. and then he flew me up to Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada. And then Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling was called World Grand Prix Wrestling.
Yeah.
And then that's where and a lot of people don't understand how I got in. It was never really planned for me to be in pro wrestling, although when my mom and dad separated, there was these photographs of Dad and Frank with the Stampede International Tag Team belts, which I have hanging up on my wall over here.
Really?
I looked at them ever since I was a kid, imagined being my dad's tag team partner all those years. And then I was in a locker room, and this is in Cocan Arena. And I haven't seen Emil since I was a little kid. And now I'm 18 years old and kind of a young bodybuilder at that time. And then Emil comes in, and he looks at me, and Dad had showed him photographs of me, some poses and stuff I sent to him. And Emil comes to me and goes, "When can you start?" I'm thinking in my mind, I'm going to make a couple extra dollars by sitting up and taking down the ring. That's what I was thinking. I said, "Well, I could start tomorrow." He goes, "Okay, good. Okay. I'll be right back. Okay." And he takes off. And then my dad looked at me, and he's shaking his head. He says, "Richie, no." He says, "He did not mean in work like in working a job. He means work like in wrestling in the ring." And I looked at my dad. I was like, "Wait a minute. I thought he was talking about just doing some, sitting up and take down a ring." And he says, "No." And I said, "Well, maybe I'll go get him and tell him." He goes, "No, it's too late. You shook his hand. Everybody's seen it now. A deal is a deal. It's a contract now." He says, "Now you have to train to be in the ring." And it's like, "But Dad," I said, "that's not what I was thinking." He goes, "It's too late. Now you have to." He goes, "You got to be a man of your word." So Dad started training me the next day.
Wow.
And he was training me in the apartment, and every time we get to the arena, and within the week, I was under the hood as the Super B. Emil brought the outfit and everything, the gear over, and I wore Emil's boots, and I was one of the Super Bs at that time. And
there is still footage of that online. There is a match of the Super Bees on YouTube.
And I was like, that's crazy, where I just constantly. Now I'm in the ring, and my first match I ever had was in Montague, PEI, Prince Edward Island. That was against Eddie Watts.
Yeah.
And I remember this. I remember my first match clearly this very day. And I go in. I met Eddie Watts, cool guy, one of the coolest guys I ever met and stuff. But then my first match, and they tell me, and we're separate locker rooms, and they send the finisher with a cassette tape with the referee. And my finish is I make my comeback, boom, and then Eddie cuts me off, and I go get him in a reverse neck breaker. Eddie grabs the rope, and then I drop down, sell my neck, and he holds the rope, and he gets me in a neck breaker, 1, 2, 3. Okay. And for those who don't understand, boom means you're fighting back. It's another way. If I tell them that, if I say that now in the locker room, the boys would be lost because the actual wrestling jargon language is gone today. If I talk the old school way of wrestling jargon, I'm not talking about carny talk. I'm talking about just wrestling jargon. So there's another language we have, so we can talk. So that way, we can be talking in public, and nobody will understand what the hell we're saying.
Yeah.
And even if you didn't know carny, you could still talk wrestling jargon. And so a lot of the jargon's lost today, completely lost today. And you try to talk wrestling jargon, these guys look like deer in headlights to you today. And or turkeys looking up with their mouths open, ready to drown from the rain. And then I'm like, it's boom, you're fighting back, boom. Then I shoot him off because the baby faces call their comebacks, drop kick, backdrop, go for a neck breaker, hold the rope, and, because, the heel called the match, but the baby face is supposed to call their comebacks. They don't do that today at all. And, people ask me, it's funny, people ask me how many things I can say about wrestling that's right today. And I said, well, I can tell you everything that they're doing right easily by simply saying 0. Everything else today in wrestling is not professional wrestling. It's a totally different thing today. And so it's choreographed thing today as back then. There was no choreography. There was no working out your matches or what people will sit there. You would work a program, what they call storyline telling today. We call working a program. Yep. And people don't understand that. It's like, well, they call it storyline because they brought in the Hollywood writers and they're writing a storyline, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, but you work a program back in the day with somebody, and the reason why it's called working a program because they sold all those program guides, and that's what the story is being told in the program guides. So they sold those on all the house shows and everything, and you're working a program, which, vaudeville play from wrestling card based upon, which is Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Match 1, Match 2, Match 3, which was a program. They had all the acts, and then they had had a program. That's where wrestling got all that from the Goldust Trio. They created that blueprint, and they used to sell program guides in the day. Now they don't. Now they sell merchandise, and as much merchandise. And Vince McMahon stole every idea he could from everybody else, and and brought it to a larger scale. And he also stole the carny ways of wrestling from P.T. Barnum, and he just turned it up. That's why everybody keeps saying that he was P.T. Barnum reincarnated, because P.T. Barnum was the first guy to come up with fictitious characters, come up with colorful costumes, for the wardrobe form and all that, and he was the one that did all that. Because he's the one that he did that, and Stan Lee from Marvel stole from P.T. Barnum on that. Like his show wasn't just any show; it was the greatest show on earth, and that's how he would say it. P.T. Barnum, and well, that's Vince McMahon. It's not it's WrestleMania, you see, and with an emphasis on it, just like P.T. Barnum. Same thing with Stan Lee. It's the Fantastic Four. No, it's not Spider-Man. It's the Amazing Spider-Man. It's the Incredible Hulk. It's the Mighty Thor. You see what I'm saying? It's that stuff came from P.T. Barnum. He was the emphasis on he was the emphasis on show presentation, and Gorgeous George brought that out in the early television and Dumont Network, and that's why he became the first television star.
Yep.
So, but I don't mean to elaborate and get far from your questions. I apologize.
I'm enjoying this. Go for it.
Yeah, but and people always ask me who's the Mount Rushmore is. And it's like, that's not even a question. I mean, Mount Rushmore is whatever appeals to you individually.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you really want, I mean, you, me, everybody, we all have our own favorites. You pick and choose. But if you really want to know the people that were the face of the business at that time that caused the bigger changes in the wrestling industry, well, that was Gorgeous George, Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan, and Stone Cold Steve Austin. Mm-hmm. And if you wanted to make a fifth face on there, then John Cena. And people ask me why I say that. So, well, Gorgeous George was there in the first television stage when Dumont Network had live wrestling on television from Chicago. Gorgeous George was the first superstar. He was the first one to come out as a character. And everybody else would look like athletes and wrestlers. He was a character. So, and then everybody tried to model after him. I mean, if it wasn't for Gorgeous George, people don't understand this. Gorgeous George, if it wasn't for him, there wouldn't have been no Classy Freddie Blassie. There wouldn't be no Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, which then to Nature Boy Ric Flair. There wouldn't have been no Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels. Wouldn't be no Y2 Chris Jericho. Wouldn't be no Seth freaking Rollins. And Seth freaking Rollins is the embodiment of what Gorgeous George is today. Complete showmanship. Complete showmanship, and the presentation. That's why Gorgeous George's entrance was so long. His matches had to go short. Because he was so much on presentation. And then in the first one of the first Raw screw drops, probably about the second one, was Gorgeous George and Chief Don Yellowfish there when they put when the referee counted 3, when obviously it wasn't a 3 count, and Gorgeous George didn't know what the heck was going on. They screwed over Yellowfish, and Yellowfish chased out the referee and assaulted him, and he went to jail for it. And the fans attacked Gorgeous George. He had to go to the hospital, get stitches because he got busted open from the fans, because Gorgeous didn't know. Gorgeous George was like, what the heck? He was completely dumbfounded, what just happened here. And that match is on YouTube. People should watch it because it was
I've never even heard about that story.
Yeah, Gorgeous George and Chief Don Yellowfish, the first and only world title Gorgeous George won, which was the AWA, but not the American Wrestling Association. It's a different AWA world title at that time period. And Gorgeous George didn't need a title. He was, Lou Thesz had to wrestle before Gorgeous George because Gorgeous George was the attraction.
Yeah.
He was, the star. Star don't need a title, Star is the one putting butts in seats. And, and Gorgeous George knew that. But then later on, early cable would come around 1975. Well, Andre the Giant was the second world's most famous athletic name in the world behind Muhammad Ali. And that's why they call him the eighth wonder of the world, another P.T. Barnum thing, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And to make him an attraction. But like I told you, I met Andre when I was a kid, and then all of a sudden in 1975, I'm watching Andre the Giant on a $6 Million Man playing Bigfoot, which started the Bigfoot mania craze. Andre the Giant being Bigfoot, $6 Million Man, and then Leonard Nimoy's In Search Of started the whole Bigfoot mania craze. And Andre put a face to it. And which I did a movie called Bigfoot! Exclamation point.
Yeah.
And I played Bigfoot, and I did that. I took that role when it was offered to me. I said, "Oh yeah, I wanted to go through everything that Andre went through." I got pictures, and I compared the two, me and Andre, and I'm the one that didn't have to have the big old headset. They just put the bodysuit on me and fluffed my hair out and painted my face up a little bit, and it's so uncanny. It's kind of weird, but they asked me if I want to get out of the suit. I said no. Andre stayed in his suit. I could stay in mine. And that heat was unbearable, I'm telling you. But I mean, I went through everything Andre went through, and I wanted the whole full effect. And so I knew what Andre went through, and I did experience it, and it was fun. Crazy, but it was fun. Long shoot days and movies, so you're in the suit for a long time. But yeah, which I got my $6 Million Man Bigfoot dolls over there. So, but the doll that they come out with was the one when Ted Cassidy played Bigfoot, and Ted Cassidy was mainly known as Lurch from the Addams Family. And
that's right, yeah.
And Ted Cassidy is from West Virginia, and he's an actor. He was from West Virginia. So, Ted Cassidy was West Virginia. I mean, you can research his life, you'll see yourself. A lot of people came from West Virginia. Don Knotts, David Selby, Joyce DeWitt, and the crippler Ray Stevens is from West Virginia.
That's right.
It's also Henry O'Godwin, which is Mark Canterbury, a good friend of mine. Jamie Noble, another friend of mine from West Virginia, and Heath Miller, which you know him as Heath Slater, also from West Virginia. Even though, no offense to Mark Canterbury, Jamie Noble, and Heath Miller, but they all know this. Me and other wrestlers are much better wrestlers than them. They just had something that was able to be marketable and more appealing. But you have to understand, WWE isn't looking for wrestlers; they're looking for something they can market as a video game character and as a toy. And if you don't go along with their program, then you're not going to be in the company. So all the best wrestlers aren't in WWE, and great performers, and a couple good wrestlers, but all great performers. But I fall in the camp of like Lou Thesz and Vern Gagne and those type of people. Even though I was a character wrestler, a gimmick that Dad created. Would you like to know how Dad created that character?
Yes, I'd love to know how he created the Cuban Assassin.
Okay, Dad was in boxing and training as a wrestler, and Dad looked so much like Fidel Castro. Yeah. Now there was another wrestler that went as Castro and used that name, Fidel Castro. But Dad, what happened was in 1968 when Dad really started wrestling, there's something that happened in the news, and that was the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy. Yeah. And when the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy happened, it brought all the assassination of JFK and the Cuban Missile Crisis. and they kept splashing that word assassin, because news media likes to splash a lot of these words to program people with all over, and they say them over and over and over, and they kept saying assassin, 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 assassin. And what happened is that had, come up like, well, he's going to be the Cuban assassin and wear the green fatigues, and he'll be the personal, like he served in the Cuban Army, although Dad was in the United States Army. I was in the United States Marine Corps, and we both Dad and I got kicked out of the military, just so you know, different reasons. Dad kicked out because he refused to speak English, and I got kicked out because I got into a fight. And Dad created that, and he said, then he come to the story that Fidel Castro sent him to assassinate the competition of all the professional wrestlers in the wrestling world, and Secret Service actually followed my dad and
No.
Frank. Oh no, they did, and I remember when 9/11 happened, and a promoter in Michigan wanted to bank on it, and I looked like where I'm trying to do the dad's character, but I had my hair pulled back to kind of look like Osama bin Laden to him, and he asked me if he can call me the Afghan assassin. I said, I don't care what you call me as long as you pay me what we agreed to, right? And then he photoshopped the turban on my head and put it in a poster and it said Afghan assassin. And then all of a sudden the FBI come knocking on his door, and they thought I was Osama bin Laden. This is crazy. They thought I was Osama bin Laden trying to disguise myself as a pro wrestler and hiding in the United States when they were searching for Osama bin Laden.
Wow.
Okay, so that goes to show you how far that the FBI and they were going through. And they told and when they realized I'm not him, I'm 5'7". Osama bin Laden is like basketball player height, and so they told him that he has to change that poster and that he has to get personal security for me. So he had to pay extra money for personal security to escort me to the ring, out of the ring, and then I had to have police escort me and my wife, and they had to follow us 5 miles down the road to make sure nobody was following us to kill me or something like that, because they thought they really were fearful for my life, and so the promoter had to spend all that extra expense, and he lost his ass out on that show there because of that, and he had a good draw, but man, to pay for all that, and the FBI told him he had to, and so I was thankful, but it was also a lot. I'm sure there's some crazy American out there, fanatic fan that would probably believe it, because my life's been tempted so many times from playing this character, and it's crazy how people believe the character is more real than the actual man playing the character.
Yeah,
it's crazy, but it's people's synopsis. If you do your job well, I guess then people are going to believe it, and that's
exactly.
But let's get to your other question. I don't want to go too far off because I know you guys have a list of questions.
No, don't worry.
Okay.
Let's go with so you started in 1989, correct?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
That year in Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling, you had Dynamite Kid and Harley Race in the locker room. Were you there for that?
Okay, I was there for when Dynamite Kid came in. Harley Race had just left the week before I came in.
Okay, he wasn't there very long. I think he was just there for a few shows. But Dynamite Kid, I've seen pictures of you when Dynamite Kid was the international champion. You're holding the belt with him. How was that experience? Because he was massive at that point in time.
Well, I'm going to tell you, Dynamite Kid, Tom, despite all the horror stories everybody's heard, he was very, very nice and respectful to me.
Yeah. And
he told me himself that he owes Dad a lot for his career. See, a lot of people don't know this. Now, Dad had told me this story later on after Dynamite Kid had already told me, which they both collaborate with each other, which is, wow, this is true. But, Dynamite Kid told me that if it wasn't for my dad, he would never got to break, because him and Davey Boy, which are cousins,
Yeah.
And came in together to Stampede Wrestling, and Bruce Hart brought them in, but they wasn't big guys. Then they were small, and Stu was kind of disappointed, and then because he thought because the way Bruce hyped him up or whatever, but Dad said, wait a minute, let's see what they can do. They're from England, and over in England the wrestling is different than here. So but Dad said, let's do something here. I can do something with this kid. And so Dynamite Kid and Dad, Dad asked if he knew how to do this, and he said, yeah. He says, okay, you're not going to work a program together. And then Dad made Dynamite look like $1 million and Davey Boy. And not that they needed it. It's just to get over with Stu, they needed someone that Stu liked, and my dad was Stu Hart's favorite wrestler. And Stu had a lot of respect for my dad because my dad was a straight-up shooter, number one. My dad can take care of himself, number two. And my dad didn't take anything from anybody. And Stu had a lot of respect for guys like that because from his time, people have to understand, Stu Hart's time period was a totally different world.
Yeah.
When he was wrestling, totally different world in wrestling where you still had what was called work and shoot matches, where Japanese style like matches where you're working together but you're shooting each other too. And so sometimes a match can turn into a real contest during Stu Hart's days. And people don't understand that. What Stu Hart went through. That's why he became one of the best shooters in the business.
Yeah.
In my opinion, and I'll be honest with you, I believe Stu Hart was probably one of the greatest shooters in the history of the professional wrestling game.
I agree with you there.
I mean, if you had a young Ed Strangler Lewis in his prime with Stu Hart in his prime, I can put money on Stu Hart would beat him every time.
Yeah.
And
did you ever make a trip to the dungeon?
Oh yeah. I went down to the dungeon, and Stu Hart, licking, salivating his lips when he gets anybody young down in that basement. You can see he's hungry for it, and he's, you want to trade a few holds and see if you might learn a trick or two. And
you always had that voice, huh?
Well, I mean, listen, everybody's a character in wrestling. Like Emile Dupree. Oh, good gosh, Jesus Christ! But his mannerisms, and I mean, it's like everybody's a character. I mean, everybody wants to mock Macho Man, but when I was around Leaping Lanny Poffo, and Lanny Poffo always speaks like this, very pronounced and very profound.
That's
and
very
he's like,
good Lanny. Yeah, that's a very good Lanny.
And he's like, and I've met Lanny Poffo, and listen, there's a synchronicity of me and Lanny Poffo. Lanny Poffo, when my mom and my dad separated, my stepdad, Donald J. Dempsey, DJ, he was a big wrestling fan. Okay? Big wrestling fan. And he took us to a ICW show at the Raleigh County Armory National Guard building, which is now the Beckley Convention Center in Beckley, West Virginia. And I got to see Leaping Lanny Poffo as the television champion there, Macho Man Randy Savage, international champion. Their father, Angelo Poffo, and he was under the hood and under the mask as the Miser.
Yep.
Okay. And I was a kid, and that was 1982. And I got to see Lanny Poffo as a fan. 1998, I'm in Columbus, Ohio, in a public access wrestling show called IWA Back Alley Brawl for Bull Miller, which passed away a few years ago. And Bull Miller, his favorite wrestler was Ox Baker, so he was Bull Miller, Ox Baker. And then I come in a locker room because the Batten twins, the sensational Batten twins, Bart and Brad, which they booked me for, but they were trained by the Poffos. And Lanny Poffo was sitting in there, and he looked right at me because I look like Dad. I can't, there's no way, I'm identical to my dad. So, and I come in the locker room, and he looks at me, he says, I know your father. I know him well. I watched your father knock out a man with one punch, and I knew right then and there, I'm going to be that man's best friend. And he's like, but I know him. And your father, he took no crap from no one. But I tell you, he earned a lot of people's respect. and and, uh, and then I'm in the same locker room in 1998 with him in Columbus, Ohio. And then in 2009 for UCW, the last wrestling show at the old original Berwick Arena in Berwick, Nova Scotia. And the last main event was me and Wildman Williams. And I told Dad, and Dad was doing an appearance, and I come to him. It's like, Dad, we got to do something special for this. This is going to be the last main event. I said, we got to come up with some idea. And Dad says, well, I got it. We'll have Wildman Williams go to pin you. Your foot be tied up in the ropes here. You pick him up, and you put your foot in and over the middle rope underneath the bottom rope, and your foot's tangled, and you can't get loose, and you pin you. The referee looks and sees your foot there. And the referee gets your foot out, and he pulls down. Wildman Williams said no, and then all of a sudden some other guy send this other guy in. He'll attack you. Then him and William will get in. I'll come out and make the save. Then the referee will say, "This match." The referee says, "This match must continue. It's now a tag team match." And he says, then we'll go to this thing. We'll go in a four-way, and this other guy come in, and then Lanny Pop will come in and make the save, and the referee will say, the referee says this match must continue. It is now a six-man tag team match. So now I'm teaming with my dad, and last time I'll be teaming with my dad and Lanny Poffo in 2009, and we let Lanny Poffo do his moonsault off the top rope and pin the guy in 1, 2, 3, and we win. And that place was crazy. I wish I had that match on video because it was one of the best matches in my life. And it started off with me and Wildman Williams. And Wildman Williams and I have been good friends since 1999. And I always enjoyed wrestling him. I always enjoyed tagging. I enjoyed tagging with him more than I did wrestling with him.
Gary's a good guy. We've interviewed him on the channel before.
Oh, yeah. Gary's a great guy. And one of the better guys to be on tour with, too. Knows how to take a rib, knows how to rib. Knows how to have fun and knows how to work and how to really good. So it was crazy, you know, and I don't know why he never used his real name Gallant, because Hubert Gallant, he could have banked on just that alone.
Yeah.
And Hubert is like Dick Clark, man. He never ages. He looks the same as he did when he was 18 as he is now. But Hubert Gallant, another guy that told me that he owes a lot to Dad. A lot of guys told me that, and Dynamite Kid did. And Dynamite Kid told me on that '89 tour. He says, "So I didn't understand all these terminology." He says, "I'll put you over, mate. I'll put you over, mate. I'll talk about to Emil work a match with you, mate. You know, I'll put you over, mate." I didn't know what he's talking about. Put me over. I didn't understand. I'm just starting, and I didn't understand that what he's talking about. He's going to let me pin him and beat him, win a match is what putting over means, you know. And I told Dad that in the apartment. He goes, "Oh, he wants to let you win a match." And I said, "Is that what that means?" And he says, "Yeah." And then next time I see him, he goes to the canteen. We call it a concession here in the United States, but the United States is backwards anyway. And but you know, you guys call it a canteen, which is what it should be called. And we call it concessions. And concessions is a totally different thing. The United States is backwards. And then he goes to the canteen and comes back, this whole coffee tray with styrofoam cups of coffee. And he's like, he has like, you know, 2 or 3 of these things. It's like, what's the deal with all the coffee? He looks at me, "You want a cup, mate? Yeah, have a cup, man. Help me drink some of this coffee here." And I was like, "Shouldn't it be a spot of coffee?" He looked at me. He's like, "You get a language from England, huh, mate?" And I was like, "Well, my mother's maiden name is Tompkins, and her side of the family, her dad's side of the family is from Great Britain. And I actually had an aunt that spoke with the proper English accent, and been around her." And he says, "Oh, yeah, you might have family there." I said, "I know I do. They don't even know I exist." And the whole Tompkins claim, or whatever, which direction they go off, I don't know. And then I'm sure, you know, because they're white as Casper the Ghost, and I show up and be a dark complected guy, they think some went wrong down the line. But about to show up, but I'm drinking that coffee, and I'm sitting there drinking. I was like, "What kind of coffee is this?" I'm sitting there drinking it. I mean, it tastes good, but it doesn't like is a different type of sugar in this? And he goes, oh, no. It's Irish coffee, mate. Irish coffee. I was like, Irish coffee? And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm sitting there drinking it. He goes, have another. I'm sitting there and I'm drinking another one. And he's like, he's having more coffee brought over. And I'm like, oh, hold up, man. It's enough coffee, man. I was like, I got to go to the locker room. I stand up and I'm like, whoa, I'm about ready to fall over. And I'm like, the room's spinning all of a sudden. I was like, the heck? And he starts laughing. And he pulls out the bottle of whiskey. Irish coffee, mate. Irish coffee. See, I tell you, Irish coffee.
That's a good one.
I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, Tom. I was like, and he ribbed me, and I was drunk and a skunk. And I was like, and Dad's like, the hell'd you do? I said, drinking coffee with Dad and my kid. He was like, oh, fuck. Rich, you should know better than to drink someone else's coffee. That's
a good rib, though.
Yeah, and I was sick, and man, I tell you, all that coffee too going right through you, and the alcohol, man, my head was aching and everything. I was like, oh Lord, but then next time you offered me coffee, I said, no thanks, Tom, I'll pass. I was like, I remember Bulldog Bob Brown being there and had a match with Dynamite Kid, and Bulldog comes running to the locker room, literally for his life, and they called the Battle of the Bulldogs, and Bulldog Bob Brown is like, he's crazy, man. He asked me to take that beer bottle and bust him over the head with it. And I said, I looked at him and said, what? He says, mate, take that beer bottle and bust me in the head. And he's like, then he starts fighting me, and I'm running for my life. It's like, he goes, I'm glad you guys didn't lock the door. And then all of a sudden, he shouldn't have said that, because the next day, he goes running from Dynamite Kid. Someone did lock the door. And so he hits the door and he pounces off, and Dynamite Kid's all over, and he's running out the side door into the parking lot. And it's just like, and Dynamite Kid's going after him, and the fans are following outside the parking lot. And Bulldog is running for his life, and he's like, call the police. And then he comes back, and the door is unlocked, and he starts cussing out everybody in the locker room. Who locked that door? And everybody was pointing at everybody else.
That's another good one.
Yeah, and my dad goes, you should never have said, good thing no one locked the door yesterday, because someone did. I don't know who did it though. I was outside because I had to go retrieve the ring gear when I wasn't under the hood, and I had to have the gear and everything. So I actually had the gear underneath my clothes, so I can just take it off and just throw the hood over and tie up my boots. And because they would have a battle royal or something, and oh gosh, I hate those battle royals in the beginning.
Yeah.
It was thrilling the first one, until you start realizing how dangerous those are, the most dangerous matches to be involved in reality sense. It's hard to be safe in one of those type of matches when you have everybody all cluttered in the ring. Thank goodness for Pat Patterson changing the game with the entrance and stuff.
Royal Rumble.
Yeah, it makes it more controllable, makes it safer. But man, I tell you, the battle royals in the beginning, oh my gosh, and back then the guys were stiffer. I mean, they didn't. Yeah. They wasn't shy about throwing anything on you, and today, bunch of crybabies in the business today, man. Lord forbid you get a little snug with them, they think you're shooting on them. I'm like, you call that shooting? I had a guy really cry in the locker room, asked me if he did anything wrong, and I asked him, what makes you think you did anything wrong? And he said, well, man, you started shooting on me. And I was like, shooting on you? He's like, no, man, I was wrestling you. You was moving 100 miles per hour. I just kind of stopped you and slowed you down. I tied you up in just wrestling hold. The name of the marquee is pro wrestling, and it's got to be some wrestling involved in there. And I was like, so I went ahead and tied you up and slowed the match down. And yeah, it's a little snug, but I'm not hurting you. I'm not shooting you. I said, if I was shooting you on you, you would know. we certainly wouldn't be talking like gentlemen back here. It would be a totally different tone of voice and other colorful words involved, and probably a couple of fists going back and forth. And it's like, but I don't believe that's how you should handle anything, really. But even I've been in my own locker room brawls, but still, that's a childish way of handling it. A man's way of handling it is talking it out and understanding there's always a misunderstanding somewhere.
Yeah.
And I was like, but no, I told him, I was like, nah. If you did something wrong, I would tell you. You would know. If I was shooting on you, you definitely would know. It wouldn't be that. And I said, I'm too old today to be doing any of that nonsense anyway. I said, I was just slowing you down and doing some wrestling. And I said, you're just mistaking it because you're in a different time period from where I'm from, a different time period. And back in the day, we actually did wrestle. And we had wrestling in there. Spots were, I didn't call them spots. We didn't call them spots. Spots, high spots and stuff. That's what spots come from. High spots are a spot on a card. You see, that's the old wrestling terminology. Again, they don't use it right today. And I'm like, high spots were what we used to call falsies or false finishes. And used to call that would come at the end of the match. It wouldn't be during the whole match. You have an opener. Yeah. You have some opening wrestling spots that I would call wrestling spots, or I call wrestling moves. Tackle, drop down, step over, block, reverse hip toss, body slam, drop kick, cover, kick out, powder. Come in, side headlock, takedown. Roll over, kick out, arm drag, drop kick, arm drag, hold the arm. Those are what I call wrestling moves, or they wrestling spots. But you don't talk that stuff over. You just you worked it out in the ring, and then you cut the guy off, work the heat. One false hope, maybe two false hopes, and that's like they're getting ready to come back, but you stop them. And then you go to the finish, and the finish is all of your falsies, your false finishes. And that's what you would call high spots today. But a high spot really is a big move that usually results in coming off the top rope, which hence the word high, And terminology today is totally different from what it is today. And what they call psychology isn't psychology. It's just making sense of your matches. You getting your crap in, he getting his crap in, and you're trying to make sense of it. When back then, actual ring psychology is feeling from the fans, feeling the emotional effect and what direction to take the match in, and how long you work the heat, when to do a false hope, when to set up to go for the falsies for the comeback and take it home. And of course we had signature moves for the TV matches, and a lot of them don't know what signature moves really are, which is the moves you're not supposed to kick out of that everybody kicks out of today. And there's no. I mean, I could tell you,
sure doesn't exist anymore.
No. The whole match is a finish.
Yeah.
From beginning to end, it's a finish. And no one. Listen, the first thing they don't do today is no one sells.
Yep.
And what I mean, no one sells. And then, like, say if you're getting beat down, they just lay there. They're dead. I'm like, they shouldn't be. You should be calling the morgue and taking them to the morgue if they're going to lay there and be dead. No one cheers. No one stands outside the cemetery. Come back to life. And and I'm like, I tell these young guys, you got to be doing something. Sell. And he's like, oh, you mean the animated? Yes, fucking sell. Get up, sell you back. You're not dead. You just got the crap beat out of you. And if you're knocked out, then you're going to have some jerking going on.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen real knockouts? I'm like,
oh yeah.
And then I'm like, you do something. People, you got to be doing something. You can't just be laying there. If you're dead, if you're laying there, you're dead. It's time to call in the detectives, homicide squad, and have them come in because it's time to do an investigation. And I'm like, and then there's no emotional connection now. I mean. Yeah. Getting people crying in tears and all this, that dastardly heel and all that, and they don't have that no more. And of course, when you make it a circus act, it ceases to resemble anything was supposed to have been originally designed for, and it becomes a spectacle, and that's what it is now. I call wrestling today a variety show.
Yeah.
And I'm like tell people the two fakest things in the world today is the news and wrestling. And wrestling comes second behind the news. The news is more fake than wrestling, and how that happened, it's crazy. And I was like, but yeah, I mean, I'm not against what they're doing today. It's not my thing. Of course, I'm long retired. Far for me to be arguing with success, although they're successful making money in other ways than from wrestling. They're not making money from wrestling. They're making money from every other thing that they get their hands in. So I don't know how they call that successful. The way I look at it as people look at it, I'm like, well, Nick Khan is more or less is a modernized Jim Herd, as far as I'm concerned. And if he takes that as an insult, good. He shouldn't, but that's what he's more interested in making money from other things than interested in trying to make wrestling. And
for me, I look at wrestling today. Am I the biggest fan of the product today? Not really. I grew up in the 90s with wrestling from the 80s. I love the territory system and all that. But now there's no big stars. Like, the promotion sells itself. Like, people are going to tune into WrestleMania and Royal Rumble.
Well,
that's what sells.
WrestleMania and Royal Rumble, okay, WrestleMania is the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Even if you're not a football fan, everybody watches the Super Bowl. It's just a time for people to get together, and people who aren't football fans are going to act like they're a football fan. Just have people come over and have beers and have hot dogs and hamburgers and whatnot, just to have a get together. And the Royal Rumble is like the World Series now, right? And like baseball. Even if you're not a baseball fan, okay, World Series is another reason to get together, have alcohol and all this other stuff, and in the SummerSlam is becoming, like the Stanley Cup now.
Yep.
Okay, and it may be an insult to hockey, me saying that, so I hope no hockey players come knocking on the door. I'm just referencing to the size of the event as a spectacular, and I'm like, and so people who aren't fans are going to tune in, and that includes wrestling fans. Oh, it's WrestleMania. Oh, let's get together. It's a get together thing now. It's weird. WrestleMania is gotten bigger than Christmas. People spend people spend less time and less money on Christmas today, but they'll spend every single bit of their mighty earned dollar and as much time as they can to get together for WrestleMania. So it's basically these sporting events are holidays to these people. It's better than a holiday. So I mean, you're right on that note there, but that's for people who's not even fans too. And I see it all the time. And then you can ask them, well, who such, but as far as a superstar, I always hated that terminology. That builds egos and stuff, and that's one of the problems in the business throughout the generations. Whenever you call somebody a star, and that's a Hollywood term, you're a bright, shining star, but that star dims and turns into a black hole, and then that's where you have all the dark side of the business happen, and all the, so they make money off of that. They make money off your positives, they make money off your negatives, but the only person not making money off that's you. And everybody else is making money, and then and I'm like, I call them main eventers. You had your card, and you have your opening, you have your mid card, which is the mid cards where all the carpenters were, and the carpenters were the guys who built the houses. They're the ones that they're working a program with the champion or the main event guys to keep them as main event guys, and they're also the guys working with the young guys on the low card, and developing them to feed to the main event guys, or to develop them to be the next main eventer that they can make what you would call a star.
Right.
Vince McMahon used that terminology, superstar, because after superstar Billy Graham.
That's true.
Uh, Vince McMahon saw his dad do two things wrong, and that Vince thought his dad should have took advantage of. One was keep the belt on superstar Billy Graham and turn babyface, but that was never the plan because Vince McMahon Sr. was old school, and Vince Jr. thought he should have turned him babyface and kept the belt on him. The other thing was he saw his dad do was turn away Andy Kaufman because he was a celebrity. Even though in the past the wrestling business worked with celebrities such as Babe Ruth and other figures,
Ali.
Ali, yeah. Well, Ali was a Vince McMahon Jr. thing, though. Just so you know, the same was Evel Knievel.
Yeah.
All that's a Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon Jr. was the one that set that boxer versus wrestler card that led up to MMA with Muhammad Ali and Antonio Inoki, and but they were doing boxer versus wrestler match long before that. The Andre and Chuck Wepner was before that.
Yep.
So was a bunch of other ones long before that. It's just the one that got the most emphasis on it was Muhammad Ali. Because Muhammad Ali stole from Gorgeous George. Gorgeous George's advice to him was make everybody hate you in the beginning. They'll learn to respect you at the end. And that's true. And Muhammad Ali stole from him. Joe Namath stole from Muhammad Ali when he took the New York Jets to the Super Bowl and bathing and all that. No one's going to tackle me. Look at this Rolex watch I got. For you fans coming out, thought they were going to sack me. I took them to the victory there. Look at this fur coat I got. Look at this new car I got here. Thank you, fans. I can't, rubbing it in, and that made him a star. And he's still a heel today, and he smiles every time they boo him because he's over. And that's wrestling. Kind of goes in different. It affects everybody else, but. And like your Hollywood people, the wrestling transcend. Hardboiled Haggerty was the first real wrestler to transcend into Hollywood, right?
Yep.
And after him, you had Andre the Giant, Ox Baker, Roddy Piper, that transcended into it. You also had, there was before Hulk Hogan, all done dusty
with Rocky 3.
Yeah, well, he done a lot of stuff after that too. You have to understand, Hogan was the first guy to break through pop culture, but right. a series of events led to that, which was him getting the role in Rocky 3. Number one, number two was Captain Lou Albano becoming friends with Cyndi Lauper.
Yep.
On an airplane flight, which connected the deal with her manager Billy Wolf. That Billy Wolf was the one, and Cyndi Lauper was the one who reached out to Vince McMahon about doing the Rock and Wrestling connection with MTV. Because her manager, he had a big play with MTV, big play, and it just happened that MTV was owned by NBC, and which that led to Vince McMahon getting the Saturday Night's main event deal and replacement for Saturday Night Live, and they got better ratings than Saturday Night Live, and
that's crazy.
Wrestlers had always transcended, into that, which I had too myself, but not as big as them. But if you want to know who the best actor of all the wrestlers, all of us, every single one of us, even Robert Maillet is, big time into that too. But the person who's the best actor of all the wrestlers is Dave Bautista.
Yeah, Batista, Drax the Destroyer was one hell of a great character.
Yeah, but compare him to his other roles. See, when you watch a Rock movie, you pretty much see Dwayne Johnson. You've seen one Rock movie, you've seen them all.
You've seen them all.
He's like Jack Nicholson. You see one Jack Nicholson movie, you see the acting doesn't change; it's the same person. But as Dave Bautista, he's actually playing different characters, He's being different every single time, and that's what an actor is supposed to be. Yep. When you look at, that's what made Heath Ledger stand out. That's why you don't see Heath Ledger as the Joker when he's playing it. You see him as the Joker, and you see him in the Patriot playing Mel Gibson's son, totally different character. You see him in The Knight's Tale, totally different character. It's a different person each one. Same thing with with Dave Bautista. It's not Drax. He's not playing Drax in all these roles. He's playing a different person, each and every single one of them.
Yep.
And I met Dave Bautista in Princeton, West Virginia. He was booked from the developmental. He's under developmental contract for Ohio Valley Championship Wrestling. And Brian Logan booked him. He was Leviathan then. He was called Leviathan.
Yeah.
And he was one of the biggest guys I ever met. And listen, he didn't lie about being on steroids. I asked him point blank, and he says, "Yeah." I said, "Man, aren't you worried about your health and your risk?" And he looked up at me. He goes, "If you want to be where I'm going to be, then you have to do it."
Wow.
Yeah, because I also saw steroids with. Yeah, I mean, he was right. But now he's concerned about his health as he gets older. That's why he lost a lot of weight. Plus, he's an actor now, and he sold his soul to the Illuminati part of the Hollywood aspect. That's why he's got the all-seeing eye and the pyramid tattooed on his chest and all that. So, no, I'm not kidding. Hollywood has got their cults, and they're there. I mean, more if you got your whole different type of groups over there. I don't want to go into too much detail or anything because the last thing I want to do is drop conspiracies or anything like that. But they do have their cult groups and everything there, and different society involvement and stuff, and different members. And you can tell the ones who's a member because they're the ones who like to blab their mouth on the news all the time, and the ones. Yeah. And then you got the ones, the exodus happening, the Hollywood exodus, where all the Hollywood actors are leaving and moving away to get away from all those groups. And a lot of them become Christians now. Like I met Dean Cain. He does these religious films, and so does Kevin Sorbo and Eric Estrada, and it's a big mass exodus. Even Stallone left. He moved to Florida. So that should tell people something. I mean, if you got max exodus of Hollywood A-listers leaving, and something's not really good over there. And then of course, Stallone's an old man now too, and Schwarzenegger is too. So I mean, they're trying to keep themselves relevant as much as possible, which they're always going to be. I mean, they're the embodiment of the American dream, both those guys, especially Arnold Schwarzenegger, coming from a different country and going by a route as a bodybuilder, growing up watching his favorite hero and then competing against his hero and beating his hero. He beat his hero.
Yeah.
And then once he accomplished all he could do in Hollywood, he had to move on. Bodybuilding, he had to move on to something else. He went to acting. He was a millionaire before he became an actor, Schwarzenegger. You know that, right? Not from bodybuilding, from real estate. From real estate. Yeah, he was real estate. He was dealing with properties and everything. He was a millionaire before he became an actor. And then when he
didn't know that,
then became an accomplished actor, well, now what I'm going to do, he goes and becomes a politician.
Yep.
And now he's in different years of his life and stuff. And his son, the one he had with the maid, he's into bodybuilding. He's a tall guy, big. He's getting big like his dad and huge. He's at the Muscle Beach working out all the time, and he looks just like his dad. And
I did see pictures of him. He does look a lot like Arnold.
Yeah, and his other kids look like Maria, his wife.
Yeah.
And his daughter is married to Chris Pratt and has kids. So, and more power to Chris Pratt. He's kind of like a modern day Schwarzenegger in a way, being Guardians of the Galaxy and all that, and other movies, Jurassic World, and and still young, and going to have a young appearance as he gets older. So longevity for him. And he's related to Schwarzenegger. His kids are related to Schwarzenegger and the Kennedys. So, and probably a few other people from a different world, over from Schwarzenegger's side of the family, but who knows, but yeah, I mean, but I want to get to some of your other questions. I'm sorry, I'm one of
Don't
them.
worry about it.
I'm one of them old guys that'll ramble off, and you got to stop me and get on to the next question.
Well, we're
Okay.
enjoying the stories, but
Oh, yeah.
back to Grand Prix wrestling for a second. This is
Mm-hmm.
almost a three-parter question. 1990 World Grand Prix Wrestling had their final TV taping. Were you around for that, or
No.
did you find
No.
out about that?
Oh yeah. Emile Dupree sold Grand Prix Wrestling after 1989. He sold it in 1990 to Big Stephen Pettipon.
And that was Maritime Championship Wrestling, and then later on Canadian Championship
That's
Wrestling.
right.
Correct?
That's right.
Were you around for these two promotions?
No. I never got booked. I never got booked from after 1989. I kind of swayed away from pro wrestling. I was wanting to do my own thing, and I was wanting to be a different character. I wanted to be the ace Richie Acevedo. And I go to a promoter, and the promoter was like, "Well, what's that?" And I was like, "Well, it's kind of like a mixture of the Latin heartthrob Al Perez and Nature Boy Ric Flair." And he goes, "Well, there's only one Al Perez and one Ric Flair, and you're neither one of them. So you've got 5 minutes to come up with a different character, or you're the Cuban." I didn't want to be the Cuban. I wanted to be something else. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to be something other than what my dad was, and so, I mean, it's like what Dustin went through until he became Goldust. I mean, it's hard to. People expect you have high expectations of who your father is, and for you to be almost like them, but you're a different person. You're nothing, even though you can look like them, but you're different. I mean, look, Stu Hart was every bit the shooter of the Hart family. Bret Hart's every bit the technician of the family, but Owen Hart was the round all package of the wrestlers. Because Owen Hart could shoot, he can shoot, he can do technical wrestling, and he can do the high flying gymnastic stuff. Okay. And then, of course, you have the fireman, Keith Hart, and you have Bruce Hart, the booker, Ross Hart, the historian. I mean, they each have their own. They're all wrestlers, Smith, all of them. But the three that...
One of the brothers that died pretty young, right? Dean Hart, I believe.
Yeah, was kind of like James Dean. Yeah. He was a great... He would have been a mastermind promoter. As a matter of fact,
really?
if he would have lived and got into the wrestling bit, he knew how to market.
Really?
He knew how to sell and advertise and market. He had that mindset, and if he was been working with Bruce, he could have been a good competitor against a Vince McMahon, because he was every bit of what Vince McMahon was in his mind, the same mindset on how to. I mean, you have to understand, Dean promotes music, rock bands and stuff, and was doing great doing that and helping and hand drew his own posters and everything and printed them off. And, he knew how to cut corners, save money. He knew how to market. He knew how to advertise. He knew how to get the attention. He knew what to say. He knew how to present it. I mean, he had that mindset, complete mindset. Like Eric Bischoff had that same mindset because he was, Eric kind of more or less ran to get that position in WCW out of spite.
Yeah.
Because he hated Paul Heyman. He hated Jim Ross.
Yeah.
Because they just treat him as like no good, nothing, and so he became the boss, became their boss. That's why Jim Ross left. That's why Paul Heyman left. They couldn't deal with an Eric Bischoff. And Eric Bischoff was every bit of what Vince McMahon was. And Eric Bischoff basically was doing what Vince McMahon did to the territories. Vince was reaping the talent from the territories and doing all these dastardly tricks. Well, that's what Eric Bischoff was doing. He was the same thing with what Vince McMahon was. That's why he lost for 83 weeks.
Yep.
And, and what costed Eric Bischoff was two things. One, he should never gave out the results of Mick Foley winning the world title.
Yeah.
That switched over the TV tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing he should never have done, this was out of his control. The merger with Time Warner is what really killed WCW.
Yeah,
and one guy that basically sold the company to Vince McMahon when Eric Bischoff and another company had it. But once he took the TV deal off the table,
It was worth nothing.
sabotaged Eric Bischoff,
Yeah.
And that was the intention because he was friends with the guy that was in WWF.
Yeah.
So and so
that time period was so hot though, like the Monday Night Wars and all that. And in '97, Grand Prix Wrestling actually made a return.
Yeah, I wasn't there for that. '97, I was wrestling, but I wasn't there for that. And they had Edge and Christian. Emil did a test. Emil did a test show because he wanted to see if he was able to promote again. And he did a test show, and he had a Bad News Brown on that card, Rick Martel.
Yeah.
He had some other people there too.
Don Callis.
Yeah, he had Don Callis,
Scott D'Amore.
Yeah, Scott D'Amore. I will tell you something about Scott D'Amore. I have respect for him and stuff, but man, he could be an asshole.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, I was in Stampede Wrestling. I met Scott D'Amore over there, and he called me by my name, Richie. So he obviously knew who I was over there. And when he was part of TNA, and I'm just trying to look. Listen, I never had, when I started wrestling, there was no one big company. There were still territories, and there were still 3 big offices, 4 if you included USWA. You had AWA still in existence, WCW, and you had WWF. And you had other small independent promotions that were still in existence. And the rise and the birth of the outlaw promotions becoming what we call the indies, independents. And then I never had no inclination to be part of a big company. There was no big company. I was just wanting to be a pro wrestler and try to make as much money as I can to live and make it a living, hopefully. And I started off with some good paydays from the independents because they were hungry for talent. And since my dad was, it got me these guaranteed paydays, $200 to $300 a match in certain places, depending on where I went. My lowest pay was $75, which was in the state of West Virginia. Then eventually I would go to $125 to $250 to $300, and a couple occasions $325. But I was getting paid these paydays, and when I was finding out how much the other guys were getting paid, I was like, that's odd. They're getting $20, $30, $40 payouts, and I'm getting $250 on this show, and it's because of who I knew and who booked me, and they have respect for my dad.
Yeah.
And plus, I was over big time, not as good as skillful wrestlers as a lot of the guys on the card. A lot of them were really good, but I had a character, and I could get over with the fans, and I got a lot of heat for it being a heel. And that's when I remember I got one of my friends booked. He got paid $75 for coming with me into Wooster, Ohio, and I got paid $250 for that. And he got mad about it, and he approached the promoter and the bookers that wanted more money. And he's like, "Well, you're paying him this," and they looked at him and they said, "Brother, you're a good hand on the card." And he goes, "But you're okay wrestler, but the problem is that you're one brand. You're a stale chip. You're just one stale bag of chips on the shelf. And what's selling around you is the Doritos and the Ruffles and the Lays." And he goes, "But you're just a stale chip, but all the barbecue and all the flavor is selling." Well, Cuban is a flavor. And he goes, "Have you seen the fans' reactions to him and to you?" And they told him this. And they said, "When you come out, you might get a yay, But when Cuban comes out, it's like, you stinking Cuban, you mother effing nuke. I'm going to go back to Cuba, you commune." And then they're throwing garbage at me and stuff. And we got to protect him getting out of the ring. He goes, "You just walk in for, yay. And then you walk out, yay." And, that's how they told him. He was offended by that. He goes, "The only reason why you're booked here is because of him, and we're paying you $75 because of him. You're making more money than the rest of the guys here. Everybody else is $30, $20, $30, $40 tops." And they said, you can't respect that. And he goes, and we're putting you on mid card. You're not the opener. You're not the main event, but you're not the opener. And he took it as an insult and wouldn't come back with me no more.
Wow.
And they said, well, I mean, we did it as a favor for you, and stuff. And I said, well, I appreciate it. And they said, yeah, he just doesn't understand. The bookers made money. They made more than me. And which was the Batten twins, which rightfully so. But if they was going to pick a guy that was going to work in the room, they'd pick me because I'm over with the fans, and they would have a night off and get an easy payday. And they're like, they're not going to get hurt. That's going to be a different type of match where they don't have to work as much. And how they put it, Bart says, when I'm walking out of the ring and I'm not breathing heavy, I don't have to take a towel, wipe the sweat off my brow. And that's a good payday. And he's like, he goes, I mean, every time I work Richie, that's what I'm getting. It's a night off every time. Night off, easy money. And they threw their belts on me all these places because they all were vying for me to be here. And then they're paying me, one will pay me $300. That's what had happened. They won't pay me $300. Well, I'll pay you $300 if you do this show. Well, I can't turn out a booking. Do you have any other shows? I'll take it. If you have another show where I don't cancel, because that'd be disrespectful and being bad business.
Yeah.
And so I was shocked to find out how much other people were. I mean, because when I started for Emile Dupree, it's $500 a week.
That's a lot for 89, huh?
Yeah, and especially for an 18-year-old kid who make a lot less at that time working at McDonald's. And McDonald's a full-time job then was probably about $225 a week. I'm $500.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, and then when Independence was hungry, and then I'm over, and stuff. Only reason why I tried to deal within the big company was to get one TV. Just to get TV exposure, one contract, just so I can get TV exposure so I can milk the indies to wrestle only 2 or 3 days a week and make money and not have to do anything else for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
And, but I couldn't get that contract because 2 reasons. One, I was so old school and not entertainment. Yeah. And I wouldn't become entertainment until I turned to acting. But then, as I got older, I started seeing that I can do things a lot easier and a lot simpler. So I kind of adopted more of a Memphis style type of wrestling, and more of a Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant type of working style, and Hacksaw Jim Duggan style. Because I was working all these guys, and I was like, well, and they all like working me because it's easy and we're having fun. But I spent a lot of my money on going to bars, drinking afterwards, and motel rooms, and I would have 2 or 3 people come with me because I didn't want to travel by myself. So I'd be paying for a room for all of us, and paying, because I was the only one making the money. And but I was also young and wanted to have fun. And hindsight 50-50, I should have put some of that money away. And, but I also got a different outlook on money. It's not all about the money for me, and the other thing is money was invented to be spent. You can't take it with you when you die.
Exactly.
So enjoy it while you can, and get the best experiences you can while you're young, because you're not going to get all this experience for the rest of your life. So
exactly. I agree 100%. I do have to ask you, because the first time I ever went to a wrestling show I was 10 years old. This was the Grand Prix 1999 Legends Tour. First match I ever saw live, you and your dad. Tag match. That seemed like, for that little time period, that second run for Grand Prix wrestling, the 99 tour seems to be like where it peaked. Like, it really got hot there. Like, you were working with guys like Rene Dupree, Mike Hughes, Brody Steele, who was Hercules at the time, Wildman Gary Williams. Any memories from that time period? Because Kurgan too, and Joey Legend, like, it seems like most of my live wrestling nostalgia goes back to 99, because that tour was just amazing.
Well, that was also the last real tour of Grand Prix Wrestling as an actual tour, because it ran from May all the way until October.
Yep.
And that was a childhood dream come true to me. And that was where I got to drop the Cuban Commando name and become the Cuban Assassin, and live a childhood dream being my dad's tag team partner. And that's the most memorable time of my wrestling career, other than me and my son and my nephew being together, is with me being with my dad. Because people got to understand, my dad wasn't home after 75. I seen him 1 week out of a year. In 1980, 2 weeks, and he was gone. So I graduated in 1989. And then now I get to be on tour with my dad. And after Legends Tour, Dad and I went over to Can-Am Wrestling there for about a month and a half. And I came home. And that's where I got my wife pregnant. And then all of a sudden, I called to try to get a hold of Dad, and his number's disconnected. And I was like, well, maybe the Harts have it. So I had Ross Hart's number, and I called Ross Hart up to try to get Dad's new number. And Ross answered the phone, and I said, hey, he's Richie, Angel's son, Cuban's son. And he says, hey, how you doing? I said, I'm doing good. I was like, hey, I can't get a hold of Dad. Can you give me Dad's number, or at least give Dad my number, tell him to give me a call? And he's like, well, sure. But he goes, listen, while I got you on the phone, would you be interested in coming up and working for us in Stampede Wrestling? And I'm looking at my wife, and I put the phone down. I was like, April, Ross just offered me to come up and work for Stampede. What should I say? And she says, well, say yes. And I said, okay, I'll do it, and so the next thing I know, 2 weeks later, I'm on a bus on the way up to Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and being picked up by Ross Hart and working for Stampede again with Dad again. And but on TV, they had me under the hood as Satanicus, because I did a character called the Red Devil, and Bruce didn't like that because of a restaurant in the motel called the Red Devil Inn, and he didn't want no one to try to do some legality, so he called me Satanicus. And Bruce was like, we'll call you Satanicus. Yeah, that sounds good. And I was like, okay. And then I only had 2 TV appearances. All the rest was house shows. But I was doing both the Satanicus and the Cuban.
Okay.
And so I was doing double duty, but getting paid for one.
This was the return of Stampede in late 90s, early 2000s, right?
2000, right. And
yeah.
And so, but in 1999, back to your question, that's the most favorite time I had in wrestling, being with my dad and with those guys. Wildman Williams being called Wildman Austin. Yep. And that name, Emile Dupree, combined Wildman Mark Merrow's name with Stone Cold Steve Austin, Wildman Austin. And he had every guy that come through his territory. He always had a guy called Hercules after Hercules Ayala. So it was Hercules, Peter Smith, and Cowboy Mike Hughes, but we'll start off spelling with a K instead of the C.
Yeah.
Okay, Cowboy with a K. Okay, and the original Hangman, Cowboy Mike Hughes. I used to call him Mark Hughes. Ribbing him all the time, and he'd be like, "Did you just call me Mark?" I said, "Why would I call you Mark, Mike? You Mark. It's like I ribbed him on that, and great guy, Mike Hughes. Let me tell you something. He blew his hip out. He had a big old bad hip injury. It was gruesome, like torn ligaments and stuff. Okay, on that '99 tour.
Yeah.
So Emil asked me if I helped set the ring up with Ron Gauguin. He paid me a little extra for helping Ron Gauguin, which Emil did. I said, I had no problem, man. I like Ron Gauguin, man. It's Emil's brother and Renee's uncle, so I always liked Ron, And so I would help him, and then all of a sudden one day here comes limping in Mike Hughes. And
the Mark Slip Day.
Come in Mike Hughes, and I can see him now. If he's seeing this podcast, he'd be like, he's calling me Mark again. And he come limping in, and he says, no, Rich, let me do it. I'll do it. And I was like, you're hurt, brother. He goes, no, I want to do it. And I'm sitting there watching him, as injured as he is, not 100%, still sitting up taking down rings because he wanted to be a part of it, because he wanted to be there. And that earned a lot of respect with people like me and my dad. And and Leo Burke. And I got to wrestle Leo Burke and the Beast. That was the Beast's last match on that tour.
Really?
His very last match, Cocan Arena.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's
I
on
believe
video.
I was there for that show.
Yeah, and he made a little emotional speech after it. Man, I was outside the ring trying to keep from crying. Because he made that announcement. This is his last match he's ever going to have, and it was me. And
the '99 tour really felt like a love letter to old Grand Prix wrestling.
That's what it was. And they brought in some other new young names and stuff, and but they had Todd, the Bob was part of it, and a couple of them. They had Sonny Two Rivers there, and I wrestled him, French Indian, Native American.
Yeah.
And he always say, even though he's taking a penny, he'll say, "I'm over," every time we pin him, and that was the thing. I'm over, but I'm over, so a great guy. I love that guy. And then wrestling Renee, we had done a French TV children's episode. Renee, myself, Wildman Williams, and Ron Gauguin at Cocan Arena. And it was a 12-hour shoot, 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. And and you can see that it's on YouTube, Lunatics, and it's on my page with starring Renee Dupree, Wildman Williams, and me. And then it's a children's sci-fi show. But the best part's the Grand Prix part and the Grand Prix scenes. And after we got back, 12-hour shoot, and that's 5 a.m., 5 p.m. We go back. Renee goes to his house. I go to the college. He's taking a shower. I'm taking a shower, getting a quick bite to eat because we got headed right back out to the same arena to wrestle in the same night. They filmed there. That's how they got the use of the arena. And and so we go there, and then Emil comes in. And he says, "Okay, you Renee, you're going to do a 30-minute Broadway, okay? Okay. Walks out, and then I'm sitting there looking at Dad, and I'm like, "What did he just say, Dad?" He says, "You're going to do a 30-minute Broadway." What? Then all of a sudden, here comes the door slamming open. There's Renee. The fuck? Dad said we got to do a 30-minute Broadway. We've been fucking working 15 hours all day doing this damn shoot, and now we got to do a 30-minute Broadway. And I was like, "Calm down, Renee. Calm down." And he goes, "Fuck my dad." And storms out, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, Renee's hot." And get in the ring, he's complaining every time I get in the hole. He goes, "We need to take it. We should just take it home right now. We should take it." No. We ain't doing that. Your dad wants a Broadway, and we got to give him a Broadway, man. And then last 5 minutes, he shoots me into a Boston Crab, and he's just holding it there. Well, I'm like acting like I'm going to give up and coming close, and then all of a sudden, the bell rings, and Renee lets go and runs out of the ring and runs back to the locker room. He grabs his gear and he goes home. He's mad. I mean, we worked 15 hours that day, and his dad has to do a 30-minute Broadway. And which I was kind of shocked too when he said that. I was like, because Emil knew the shoot. He knew. It's like Renee was hot, and then I guess Emil got mad at Renee, and then he's had me and Renee do more 30-minute Broadways after that on other shows. And then one time we had this locker room. There's got conjoined, even though we're separate locker rooms, you can walk in at each locker room. I come back having lunch before the show, and then Renee's gear is all over the place. He's got his trunk sitting in my gear bag, wide open. So I'm open my gear bag, let everything air out, take the boots out, let it all air out from the sweat and stuff, because you can't always go to a laundromat. And I'm like, who's trunk? And I'm picking up Renee's trunks. I was like, what the heck? So I turn it inside out, and I see, Peter Smith putting this icy hot oil on his body for his joints. I said, give me some of that, brother. And he hands it to me, and I saturate the crotch of Renee's trunks there, saturate it all nice in there, turn it out, and I put it over on the other side in his gear bag. We go out there in the match, and Frank Parker, the late Frank Parker, referees refereeing the match, and Renee's sitting there, and after a few minutes, he starts fidgeting. He's like, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god!" And I'm like, "What? What?" He goes, "My balls are burning. My balls are burning." And I was like, he goes, "Take it home. Fucking take it home." I said, "Oh no. Your dad wants a 30-minute Broadway. We're giving him a 30-minute Broadway." And I heard him there. And then again, he does that shoot, push me over in that Boston Crab. And he's sitting there and he's fidgeting back and forth with these hips like Elvis Presley or something. He's holding me like there. And then after the bell rings, he runs back. I go in the back and he has his trunks pulled down to his knees and he's splashing water up on his balls from that sink. I mean, he's literally sitting in a sink splashing up water on his balls. And I'm sitting there smiling and the boys are laughing. And then Frank Parker, Frank Parker thought he did it. I don't know how in the world he thought he did it, but I let him take the blame. And then for years, Renee thought Frank Parker did it until Shanae stooged me out to Renee in the van on the way to the shows. She started laughing. That wasn't Frank. That was Cuban. And Renee looked back at me, big old eyes, and he goes, "That was you?" Like that. And I was like, "Yeah, that was me." I just let Frank take the fall because he confessed to it for whatever reason. I don't know why he thought he did it. And then Renee looked at me and says, "That was a good rib," and turned around. It's like, but yeah, I mean, I actually hide his crotch, and then because his trunks were in my gear bag, and I was like, how disrespectful. So I taught him a lesson to keep his gear in his gear bag with him. Like he owned the place, like it's his bedroom or something. It's like, but that was on 99 Legends tour, and I had great matches with Dad. I remember this match. It was Hercules Peter Smith and Chi Cruz going against Dad and me. And Dad, we always have belts for our green fatigues, but Dad has a leather belt, right? And Dad was in the ring with Peter Smith, excuse me. And the referee was Frank Parker. And next thing you know, Dad's saying this, he's going, hot tag, hot tag, hot tag. And then Peter starts waylaying Dad. All of a sudden, I hear my dad going, and I was like, uh-oh, I know what that means. And Chi Cruz starts getting this big old, trying to keep from bursting out laughing on the other side. And I was like, uh-oh. And then Dad, while Peter's beating the crap out of Dad's pulling the belt and taking the belt out of his pants, and he takes it up and he starts lashing at Peter Smith like whack, 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 whack. And Peter's like trying to block and everything. And then he tags in Chi, then Dad throws the belt over to me in the corner, and then we're back to business. And then I remember Dad going out of the locker room and going to, this is, I believe, Cocan Arena, and we go around to the other side, and I'm following Dad. I was like, "Dad, what are you doing?" I have a talk with that fucking Mark. And then burst open the babyface locker room. "Hey, motherfucker, I told you in there, I said, hot tag. And Peter goes, "Well, geez, Angel, I thought you kept saying attack. And I was like, "Why is Dad?" It's like, "Dad," it's like, "Calm down, Dad." And he's like, "Fucking Mark," and he walks out, and it's like, and Peter's like, "Rich, I didn't mean anything." But I said, "I know that, Peter. You got to apologize to me, brother. I was there. I know you. My dad speaks broken English. Even I have a hard time translating." I was like, "But you know what's even worse, Peter, is if you had a Spanish guy there to translate, he would have a hard time trying to understand Dad too." So, I mean, Dad speaks broken English. That's what he kept saying, hot tag, and he thought it sounded like attack. And as soon as Dad was doing that, I was like, uh-oh, I know that sound. And Chi-Chi's over there grinning, trying to keep from laughing. Chi-Chi's like, "I knew it was going to happen. I just knew when I heard him say, I heard your dad say hot tag, and Peter started beating him. He's like, and your dad was doing that, and he's like, I knew that was the code." And he says, "I wasn't tagging in until your dad was done."
those are awesome memories. I know Grand Prix came back in 2005 for a few years. Renee
Mm-hmm.
brought it back in 2013 until 2017. Do you
Mm-hmm.
think like Renee could bring it back? Like I know that Emil has passed away now. Do you think Renee could bring Grand Prix back?
Renee could,
Do you
but
think he wants to?
I think there's a part of him that wants to. And if he was to bring it back, and I'm retired, I would probably come back just to do it for him. Because I know Renee since he was 5 years old, since
Yeah.
1989, and you know, and this is something else too. In 1999 Legends Tour, my last memory, Renee was 5 years old. I went to the canteen and he didn't have any money, so I bought him a Coke or Pepsi to drink. It was a soda, and my dad saw that, and I go in the locker room. My dad said, "I seen you there buying Emil's son a soda from the canteen." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "You never know. You may be working for him someday." Another true statement from my dad. My dad's kind of like
That's true.
because that did happen. And Renee and I are good friends. I mean, he may not mention me as much, but I'm not in that hierarchy epsilon that he is with all those people that made it to WWE. Like I said, people change when they get up there. Not the same people as you once know them. So, I mean, why would he invite somebody that wasn't part of the company to be on his podcast? So, and I think he's got more onto the podcasting scene than anything else. I got my own little podcast that's tell my whole life story,
That's right.
And it's called the Cuban Assassin Podcast. For those, if they search out Cuban Assassin Podcast on YouTube, it's also on Rumble. You can subscribe to me there. And
it's a fun listen. I've seen an episode or two, and it's really good.
Yeah, I mean, everybody wanted me to write a book, but I'm so old school mentality that I believe. Listen, look, I can talk a lot about stuff that happens on the road, and there's a lot of stuff that happens that should never happen on the road, and there's so many people that's lives will be affected if I was to come out and say this. And that's what nobody's not really interested in all the good wholesome. I mean, there's people who wants to know that stuff about the wrestling, but then they all want to get in that dark, dirty dinge and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's not for me to tell that. Even though I was there and I experienced it, I know a lot about stuff. I've seen a lot of stuff happen that shouldn't happen. I've seen things that shouldn't have gone down in the wrestling business, and not just in it's everywhere. And that's not for me to tell. That's not for me to tell. And I'm like, what happens in Vegas stays. What happens on the road should stay on the road, And I'm not here to judge anybody, because nobody. And listen, just because we're all making sacrifices to do what we love to do, doesn't give excuse or make it right on any wrongdoing or anything. But the problem is that you can't judge a person until you walk a mile in their shoes. And to sit there and to judge, people for doing these things and stuff. Well, I'm not saying there's a lot of stuff that should never happen, that are illegal stuff that does happen. But again, it's not for me to judge. That falls into me in a higher power. And these court systems, especially in America, is a stage, a theater that affects people's lives. And one thing I don't think should be allowed in any court of law is circumstantial evidence, because, circumstantial doesn't necessarily make one man guilty, nor does it make another man innocent either.
Yeah.
So it should never be allowed. And how we have a court system where we have a judge because here it's supposed to be that you have the right to defend yourself and prove your innocence, where you're supposed to bring any and all evidence to prove that. But then a judge is going to look at it and say, I can't allow that. I can't allow that. Wait a minute. Hold up. Wait a minute. This is my life you're playing games with here. I'm supposed to bring all the evidence here to prove my innocence, while this asshole over here only cares about wins and not really caring about the rights of me. And he's going to throw the book at me in every way possible because he wants to be a superstar politician and run for president one day.
Yeah.
And that's what prosecuting attorneys are. Their dream is to be a higher power. Okay. Yeah. And they're just scoreboard wins. They don't care. If they were a real prosecuting attorney, they should be looking at the case and say, wait a minute, I got to dismiss this case. I can see there's stuff that can't be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, but they'll still find stuff or whatever, and that's why they bring the circumstantial evidence into play, which circumstances don't mean you're guilty nor innocent. It's it's a ridiculous thing, and if you're going to prove your innocence, you should be allowed to bring any and all evidence, and the jury should be able to hear any and all evidence, on both sides of the table. And then that's when they're supposed to lay their evidence in that scale of justice and blind justice, and which one weighs the more is the one of the actual play. But to me, the judgment comes from a higher power. So I just think that that's not for me to judge. If there was murder or something involved, now don't think I won't try to make sure that there's going to be some right come out of that, because that's something totally different, but there are stuff that happens on the road that I can't talk about. I would never talk about. It would affect too many lives, and no one would truly would understand unless you've been there, and done that. Yeah, and no one should judge another person based upon hearsay anyway. And circumstances, to me, circumstantial evidence is hearsay, all of it. I don't know how they said we can't allow that. It's hearsay. Well, all circumstantial evidence is hearsay. Mm-hmm. It's what it is, And you need factual evidence, facts and scientific evidence. Factual, anything that could be backed up in a court of law. And even some of the scientific evidence is actually pseudoscience, like bite marks. Mm-hmm. Pseudoscience. It's not a real science. It's not even. And so many guys been convicted of a crime, then all of a sudden later on DNA proved it wasn't them.
Yeah.
And then that bite pattern scientist is still going to stick to his story, even though they have another science that exonerates him. So just crazy. But that's why I'm telling it in a different way, where I have control of the narrative, and going along telling my story as everything goes on from birth all the way to when I retire. Well, it's where the end is, when my retirement is, and then so I'm getting, I already got pre-recorded episodes. I just release them once a week.
Yeah.
And it's only about 30 some minutes, 20 to 30 some minute episodes. So, and I back it up with factual photographs, newspaper clippings, footage, news footage. So that way people know I'm not just jabbering, like I do on stories.
Yeah.
Even though my stories are more real than what people think they are. The 1999 tour was the greatest time of my life as far as pro wrestling was. And I learned so much from that and had a lot of respect from everybody, including Cowboy Mike Hughes. Because they were just starting. Mike and Peter were just starting.
Yeah.
And
they were that year, right?
Yeah, but they were nice guys.
Yeah.
And of course, I wouldn't want to get on the bad side either, but they're big guys and strong guys, but they're nice guys. And I don't think people should take their kindness as weakness, because they're really good guys. And Renee was great when he was 15 years old then, 1999, and it was a great thing there, on that tour. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun, a lot of good memories. Got to wrestle Leo Burke, one of my mentors. Leo Burke and Ron Starr were my mentors.
Yep.
You know who smarted me up to the business?
Is it Ron?
Ron Starr, yeah.
Yep.
And that's who Ronnie from my Boxer versus Wrestler movie is based upon. Him, a mixture of him and Ron Jeremy, the adult film star. Yeah. and with a little bit of superstar Billy Graham in the tone, and but basically, Ron Starr smarted me up. He's the guy that I guess he got tired of seeing me get the hell beat out of me. That's what I was going to tell you in a story about the first match with Eddie Watts. I remembered it in Montague, PEI. I go out there. Everybody's like, good luck, good luck. And dad tells me, he says, Richie, this is the big leagues. This is the real world. You're on your own. I'm not going to watch. Okay. I go out there and Eddie Watts comes out, gets in the ring. And yeah, Emil likes the old school, which I agree with the referee explaining the rules, makes it look like a professional sport. And Eddie stops the referee and he says, and his eyes are real big, and he says, I don't care who your daddy is, and I ain't going to be easy. And I looked at the ref and said, what does he mean by that? And he shrugged his shoulders and rings the bell. I go to hook up, and Eddie gives me this big old stiff knee to my gut, knocks the breath out of me. So I'm like, and then he comes over and gives me a high knee lift. And he smacks his hand on my back, and I'm standing up straight from the smack instead of still on the knee. And I hear Eddie say, oh, no, you don't. And then I had the Super B mask on. He put his two fingers in the eye sockets and the thumb in the nose and twisted the mask and pulled me down. And he gave me this big old stiff forearm. Wow. And I go straight to the mat. Now, I got more stinging on my back. I can't breathe. I hear look out. And I turn my head. Here comes a big old boot. Wow. Hits me in the side of the head. Next thing I remember, I see the arena lights going around in a circle. Just go in a circle. And the next thing you know, I hear a ding, 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 ding. And then I'm just wondering what's going on. And the referee's helping me back. I'm literally knocked out. And I get back in the locker room trying to compose myself. And then comes Stomping Paul Peller. Angel, you're not going to believe it. Your son's a natural. He's a natural. And my dad's like, yeah. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, natural. I naturally got my ass beat out there, and it's like, and Dad said, what? And I said, nothing. I didn't say anything, and and then there'd be times I would be crying, and I'd be crying in the shower so no one could see me cry. And I'd be crying in the shower because it was so physically abusive. And I didn't want to shame my dad, so I'd be crying in the shower. I would never let people see me cry.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, we're in Andy Kanish, and there's a hallway with the light out. We all come up from the same entrance, but separate locker rooms. They got the light out so that way we can walk across, even though we can go down in the main hallway, but we didn't want people looking down the main hallway where the canteen is, where they can see us. So we kept that light out in the both hallways so we could just run across.
Yeah.
We had to. And I was peeking out the door, watching the match, and then all of a sudden I hear, psst, psst, Richie. And it's Ron Starr across the hall at the other door. And he's got his mouth covering up his hand covering his mouth here. And he's like, when you get out there, I want you to hit him. And hit him as hard as you can. And I'm like, yeah, right. He's kicking my ass. I'm not going to agitate Eddie Watts, And he's like, I mean it. If you don't hit him as hard as you can, when you get back here, I'm going to kick your ass. And he shuts the door.
It's like, one way to get things done.
And I'm like, is he serious? And I just saw him try to choke out a guy, and I saw him headbutt a guy, spat on him, and knocked him out with a headbutt and broke the guy's nose, a fan. And then so I'm in the ring, and Eddie's doing his regular thing, beating the hell out of me. And then all of a sudden I look over, and there's Ron Starr sitting there with his arms crossed right in the main entrance, right there where he could be seen, and he's shaking his head no. And I'm like, crap. I'm like, ain't no way I'm going to go through Ron Starr. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm already taking an ass whipping from Eddie Watts. What's a little more of an ass whipping from Eddie? I'd rather have it from Eddie than have it from Ron. So I drill back and I punch Eddie as hard as I could in his gut, and Eddie bends over, and I'm waiting for it. I got my eyes closed, waiting for him to go ballistic on me. And all I hear was, that's it. And I open my eyes and look at him, and he goes, that's it, do it again, hit me again. And then I'm sitting there fighting back, turning my feet, and he's telling me, now he's finally talking to me, feeding me. And I'm slowly getting up, and he's like, do it again. And he's selling my punches like I'm Superman or something, right? And he's backing up, and each time I'm stepping in, he goes to the corner, and he grabs my arm, pulls me in. He says, shoot me out and bend over and give me a backdrop. And that's the first time he's feeding me. And I do it, and I give him a backdrop, and he's sitting there, and he has that arm up. I remember grab that arm for out, and so I grabbed the arm. I looked back, and I grabbed the arm, and Ron Starr wasn't there. He was gone. I come back in the locker room. I sit down beside Dad, and Dad sits there. He goes, And I was like, what? What did I do? And Dad goes, about fucking time. I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, Richie, if you're just going to let someone beat on you, they're going to beat on you. You always have to fight back. Well, why didn't you tell me this? Richie, wrestling is like swimming. You have to either learn how to swim or you just drown. Yeah. It's like, good thing you didn't teach me how to swim, Dad. You know? But, yeah, let's give another one of those questions in real quick here that you want to ask.
So, one of the questions, we're going to wrap things up pretty quick here, but one of the questions that I want for you is, in June of this year, Dave Boyce is putting on the Leo Burke Cup. It's the first one. A few names have been announced, and Dave has told us that he has intentions of bringing in legends. Is that something that you would make an appearance for?
I would, but he needs to get a hold of me earlier because I had to renew my passport and everything. But, yeah, I would do an appearance for Leo. Leo was one of my mentors. And as much as Leo Burke is the Hulk Hogan of the Maritimes, the Cuban Assassin is the Gorgeous George of the Maritimes.
Yep.
And like everybody keeps saying, Leo Burke's the Hulk Hogan, but I see a bunch of T-shirts of the Cuban Assassin being printed up in a lot of different places in the Maritimes.
Yeah,
I've yet to see one. I've yet to see one of Leo Burke yet, and I'm not trying to place no disrespect, but just looking at this concept here, I think there's a little bit more weight of scale of who was people's favorite. And I go to the Trailer Park Boys, the Green Bastards, based upon my dad.
Yep. I did hear that story.
Yeah, he was based on my dad. They called him the Green Bastard because he wore the green pants, right, and the green fatigues. Okay. That Green Bastard, and that's based upon my dad. I don't hear him calling that Leo Bastard. I hear him calling the Green Bastard. But like I said, I'm not placing no disrespect. The Cornier family were good to me, and definitely have their place in wrestling royalty, no doubt at all. But they seem to forget about the Acevedo family. That there is another wrestling family out there, and there are two guys that are responsible for help developing a lot of superstars. My dad, listen, a lot of the 80 superstars that you've seen on there, my dad was responsible for. In some way or fashion. Bret Hart, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, the British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Kidd and Dynamite Smith, Owen Hart. Then they brought in guys that were Dad's peers, Maka Singh as Bastion Booger, and brought in Bad News Brown, which was Dad's best friend, and they would bring all these other guys in, and then people I worked with and stuff. They take in Rene Dupree, they take in David Hart Smith, they take in T.J. Wilson, they take in Natalia. Natalia wasn't wrestling then when I was there, but she was there, and she helped out like all the Hart family all helped out on the shows. And then Eddie Colon and Carlito, and not just them. There's other people. I mean, there's other people they took in, like the Hot Shot Johnny Devines and then other people. I mean, it's just weird that, and I was dealing with those agents, and Vince wanted Dad, but the knife fight between Dad and Bad News Allen is one of the reasons why they had that no tolerance policy. Because after that knife fight, then you had the fight with Rene Rouge, with
Dynamite and Jacques.
Jacques Rougeau and Dynamite Kid. And after those two incidents, that's where Vince had the no tolerance policy.
Yeah.
And I dealt with the agents, but again, I'm not going to, like I said, I never really had the aspirations of being part of a big company, because when I started, it wasn't a big company. That didn't come until freaking 2001. And look at my age from 1989 to 2001.
Yeah.
And I was dealing with them all the way up until 2007. I dealt from anybody from Tony Guerrero to Kevin Kelly to Tom Pritchard to Mark Carrenos and John Laurinaitis.
Yeah.
If a Jim Ross would have met me, circumstances could have been different.
Yeah. Jim Ross really liked the territory style wrestlers.
Well, Vince McMahon liked second generations too. If Vince would have met me in person, if Vince would have met me in person, I could have had a job. May not have been the one I wanted, but I could have had a job. I was only wanting one contract just for TV exposure to milk the indies, because I understood real quick when Sergeant Slaughter was let go because of the G.I. Joe Hasbro deal.
Yep.
And Vince McMahon held the LBJ toy deal. Sergeant Slaughter was on the indies and making money. Made more money on the indies than what he was making working for Vince.
Yep.
And he got to be on AWA and kind of had a schedule like AEW does, where he just had to do TV appearance, couple of house shows, and then the rest was whatever he wanted to do. But he also had to do all the G.I. Joe appearances and had to do all the G.I. Joe voiceovers for the cartoon series. And people want to talk about Hulk Hogan. Well, Sergeant Slaughter was the other guy on the B team that was selling out crowds with him and Iron Sheik.
Yep, that's true.
And Vince didn't want to cross Sergeant Slaughter and Hulk Hogan at that time, because they were his two top baby faces, and Sergeant Slaughter was his backup. If Hulk Hogan would have failed, Sergeant Slaughter was the backup plan.
Yep.
And Sergeant Slaughter, went into pop culture himself with G.I. Joe. He's the original G.I. Joe of wrestling.
Yep.
And so, I mean, and I understood that really quick, and I was like, well, man, I want to be like that. That's the key. So I wanted to get exposure, get a contract, wrestle for 2 or 3 days out of the week, and then take the rest of the week off and just make money as a wrestler until it was time to retire. So that was my goal, but I got ridiculed from a lot of my peers, and I don't understand that. Everybody was trying to get in with the big company. I was just trying to get one contract. I wasn't trying to stay for life. I just wanted to get the exposure to milk the independents, and that's it. Because my paydays, as the independents were growing, my paydays were getting less and less because all the backyarders started coming into play.
Yep.
And then it's like, one promoter's like, why should I pay you $75 when I could pay this guy $5, 2 hot dogs and a soda? It's like, well, you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
And I was like, if you're paying $5, 2 hot dogs and a soda, and that's all you're going to get is $5, 2 hot dogs and a soda out of that. And that's exactly what he got. Because he did bring me back. He did bring me back and started paying me $75 again and put the belt on me on top of it. So I was like, well, I mean, I told you, you get what you pay for. And I mean, my paydays were getting less, and the independence was changing because the real businessmen, because they had sponsorship in the beginning, and that's where the money was coming from. But then they started losing their sponsorships because of certain wrestlers doing things they shouldn't be doing. The sponsor don't have no association with it, so they ran away from it. And they started losing sponsor. They couldn't pay someone like me, and if they can pay someone else to be a generic version of the Cuban for less to pay, and that's what they did. But then again, they all eventually brought me back, and they would pay me somewhat of money, but nowhere what they were paying me. Like the $250 paydays, all of a sudden were going to be $75 paydays, and so the respect of my dad went out the window after the backyarders came into play.
Yeah.
And the backyarders was the CM Punks and those days, and CM Punk was a backyarder. I remember meeting him. He was wearing his long jammies, had this orange and green hair, and tennis shoes, and he was just he was really an asshole. Now he wasn't like that to me, but how he acted is what I'm talking, the aroma of it.
Yeah.
And I remember him berating somebody and telling somebody that in 10 years, 10 to 15 years, he's going to be Vince McMahon's number one guy, and that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. And this was when the pipe bomb incident happened, and then later on, just 10, 15 years, almost about 12 years later, but he went. But what Punk did was he went and got trained though. After that, he actually went and wanted to be a wrestler. Then he started emulating Macho Man Randy Savage and Bret the Hitman Hart. He started doing things that they were doing. So I was like, well, least he's learning, and he's decided to change himself from being a backyarder to being a wrestler, and now he wrestles. He wrestles good too.
Yep.
So
he's a very good wrestler.
Yeah, one of the last of the old ones, really.
Yep.
Probably, the last megastar they had was John Cena, so now it's going to be a phase where they find that next it guy, and because CM Punk ain't gonna be there long, and AJ Styles
is aging out.
Yeah, AJ Styles is going out. Brock Lesnar's going out, so Randy Orton, he's aging out too, and his injuries are piling up on him. So the mileage is winding down. So I hate to see it. I really do.
Yeah.
Well, time makes fools of us all.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sorry about rambling off, but I'm an old man.
Don't worry.
So.
Don't worry.
Hey, you know what though? Like, there's one thing that you spoke about earlier that I really, really liked, and it was that analogy of P.T. Barnum being the kind of the father of marketability and like selling. I'm not going to call them superstars, but main eventers, and how you were saying how you wanted that big contract, go to the big company, and then sell yourself on the indies.
Yeah, whore myself off. Yeah, I whore myself off. We're all prostitutes in this business. We're just cheap prostitutes, so maybe I should have. I should have went to what Ron Jeremy was doing, but my films were all be short. So, and but go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. But you know what? Like, I was thinking about that. You were talking about Sergeant Slaughter as well, and how, he was kind of their number two. And I remember as a kid, my obsession at that time was monster trucks. And I got into this film that was called Blood, Sweat, and Gears that had Sergeant Slaughter in it.
Yes, I remember it. I remember
kind of the connection that I made between the two, that there was a character in that movie that brought me into wrestling.
That's
kind of how. Yeah.
The best heel babyface turn ever in wrestling history was Sergeant Slaughter and Iron Sheik, and it was done by one simple act. As Iron Sheik won his match and was leaving out to leave, Sergeant Slaughter, they was already playing Sergeant Slaughter's theme, and he was coming down the aisle, and then they come to each other. And remember, Sergeant Slaughter was a heel. And Sergeant Slaughter come up to the Iron Sheik, but he was also supposed to be a Marine Corps hardcore American DI, and he's coming down, and the Iron Sheik goes to, step out of the way, and he steps over in Iron Sheik's way in both directions, and Iron Sheik, and they never made no contact. They just looked at each other, and Iron Sheik just was sitting there having words with him, and Sergeant Slaughter just sitting there, saying, "I'm for USA," and that's all it had to be. And people automatically knew they had a new hero with Sergeant Slaughter stand up to the Iron Sheik. And Iron Sheik made Hulk Hogan from dropping the title. And he also now made Sergeant Slaughter the second biggest babyface, and that was Vince McMahon's backup plan for in case Hulk Hogan failed, is Sergeant Slaughter. So he had a babyface in the A and B team, so he couldn't lose. But Hulk Hogan started blending into pop culture. So did Sergeant Slaughter. Both of them did. So it worked out. And but if you ask me, and I like Hulk Hogan, but I really like Sergeant Slaughter. One of the reasons why I became a Marine. So even though he really wasn't a Marine, but I became a real one. So.
Well, this was a trip down memory lane. This was absolutely awesome. We could listen to you talk for hours and hours and hours.
I'm Grandpa Cuban now, so.
So we're going to end the episode here. We'll probably bring on good old Richie once more in the future.
Sure. Love to be back.
Anything else you'd like to say to your fans before we end this?
Well, people can see my movie Wrestle Massacre on Fossum TV for free. You can see The Mountaineer on Fossum TV, Tubi TV, or Amazon. You can see Boxer vs. Wrestler, Legends Mountain, the Cuban Assassins docufilm, and my latest film, Fly the Patsy, on YouTube and Rumble. And if you guys want to check out my Cuban Assassin podcast, it's put in the search engine of YouTube and Rumble, the Cuban Assassin podcast. You can subscribe to me there and watch, and you get to hear my story instead of me writing it out. And I think people will find quite entertaining because I make it like a little wrestling. I think I make it like a little wrestling program. So, so I'm still kind of sticking to pro wrestling. So, but anybody can contact me at Mountain Man Productions at outlook.com. It's capital M for Mountain, capital M for Man, and capital P for Productions, outlook.com. And if people want to get hold of me on Facebook, it's under Richie Acevedo. I'm on X under, I think, Cuban _assassin. But you can probably type in Richie Acevedo and it should come up the same. And you can reach me on those platforms. I'm also on TikTok. If people want to check me out there. I do have a Snapchat, but I hate Snapchat. I don't even know why I even got it, and it's a good place for trouble, if you ask me. I don't have no Instagram, so check me out, and hopefully you guys have me on. And I don't mean to correct you on some of your wrestling knowledge that you have on the YouTube channel, but I just had to. Like a lot of people think Dad started in 73 because of Wikipedia, but they got it wrong. Dad started in 68. Yep. David, which is Fidel Sierra, started in 73. And that's where they're getting the lines blurred a little bit. Dad went in 73. He was wrestling in WY Saturday Night Wrestling, then moved on to the Vachons in 73 in Montreal. But yeah, check it out and hopefully check out some of the old matches. Mine, Dad, my son, my nephew. I wish I could find matches with my uncle from Puerto Rico. I just can't find them yet. Which is under Cyclone Acevedo. And, hopefully one day they'll come up because he did wrestle quite a few years and deserves his spot in the history lines of wrestling. So, my uncle was a good wrestler too. His wife wouldn't let him leave home. So, yeah. And he made the right choice by being a family man. So there's no right or wrong. It's what you think is what's best for you. Yeah. So, but I thank you guys for having me, and keep up the good work and keep up.
Thank you very much.
Keeping wrestling going in the Maritimes. And if that guy ever wants to get a hold of me for the Leo Burke Cup, I'd be more than willing to do an appearance.
I'm going to send a message to Mr. Boyce. The pleasure's all ours. First match I ever saw live was Richie and his dad, and true wrestling legend. And it's like I said, the pleasure was all ours.
Oh, thank you. The pleasure is all mine too. So thank you guys. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry I'm an old man and I rumble a lot, so I apologize.
Great stories. Don't apologize. You're a legend. You've earned your stripes in wrestling, and you've earned this time, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And with that being said, thank you everybody for listening, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Unofficial Maritime Wrestling Podcast. We drop new episodes every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Atlantic Time, so make sure to join us each week. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram, and also listen to the episodes and interviews on all your favorite podcast platforms, like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. And if you want to support us even further, grab one of our t-shirts over at Pro Wrestling Tees. Just scan the QR code to get yours. Until next time, thanks for listening and supporting Maritime Wrestling.